Hello everyone, I'm Enzo from Citizen and this is Free Lunch. The coronavirus has had a huge effect on every industry. The entertainment industry has been hit hard as well. Events, concerts, films, practically every business that needs an audience has been brought to a screeching halt. What's even more alarming is that right before this pandemic hit, we were seeing unprecedented growth. So much content was being produced, films were being made, there were sold out gigs left and right, and events every week. And all of a sudden, nothing. This has left so many freelancers and creatives scrambling to find a way to adjust. In this episode of Free Lunch, we talked to Jolly Estaris, a video specialist at Google. He gave some useful tips to handle the changes in our industry. Hey Jolly, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, how are you, man? Good to see you or hear you.
Okay, as everyone knows, Google is way more than just a search engine at this point. You've come up with so many products over the years that honestly I can't live without, and I'm sure that the viewers feel the same way. But more importantly, Google has also shown a commitment to helping the community. So maybe we can start there, Jolly. Can you take us through some of the projects and resources that Google has launched that can be helpful to our viewers?
Sure. A lot of projects have launched in the last month and a half. So education is one. We have G Suite for Education. So we've been able to basically make some features free for educators, for students until I believe July. So they can take advantage of those things as well as some seminars. We also have mobility reports. I think local governments especially can use a lot. It actually is able to track people's movements to and from key places. So stuff like residential areas, hospitals, groceries, malls, etc. So normally you would see a reduction in movement towards more public places and an increase in more residential places, and you can track that over a period of time. As you know, there's a project that we're working on with Apple for contact tracing. That's super exciting, and so that should come to our phones very soon.
Okay, so in this podcast, we hope to help freelancers and creatives that have sort of lost their way because of this pandemic. What's the role of creatives and media practitioners in times of crisis like this?
Right. We actually did like a live stream for some agencies and some clients some weeks back, especially in the early parts of the quarantine. A lot of brands were sort of just figuring out how to best respond to the situation. But it's the role of the creatives and the media agencies to find, I guess, creative ways for brands to still say their piece in a way that is true to who the brand is and in a way that's sensitive and helpful to the situation. So I think we started that broadcast by talking about which specific verticals or which specific industries had a good sort of right of way to talk about their product and which ones maybe would want to stay back for a while. And then we followed up with another live stream where we talked about how brands can still continue making creatives during a time when production houses are closed and we can't go outside to do shoots and things like that. So I think there's a huge role for creatives at a time like this.
Can you talk about that a bit? What can creatives do if we're all stuck at home?
Actually, we had this framework which we talked about, which is called CCC: create, curate, collaborate. Initially, that framework was actually something we would talk about in the context of starting a YouTube channel. There are some creatives that you would do yourself and some you would outsource to either creators or to users. But we figured that because we're in a time where we have some constraints as far as shooting or production, we thought it made sense for the time. So create is making stuff yourself, whether you shoot something new or you use something that's existing and you repurpose it for something else. Curate is basically getting user-generated content to come up with something new. And the last is collaborate. So in our case, working with YouTubers, because YouTubers are known to do to make videos in a very sort of constrained environment. They churn out stuff in a short amount of time, and they can do most things just within their home. So it seemed like the right kind of collaboration to do at the time. But collaborate can also mean working with government agencies, working with NGOs, That's also part of Collaborate. So that was our CCC framework. So we also showed a few examples of how different brands have used CCC. So just to give you some of those, for Create, if you search for VIX Philippines, looks like they shot the creative outside, but really like one of the actors in that short film was actually the director himself. Parang gave a shot list to his crew, gave a shot list to some agency people, used drones to create the illusion that it's being shot from outside. For Curate, it's not a brand, but like if you look at John Krasinski, he started a talk show
Yeah.
purely based on user-generated content, right? The tear-jerking, some good news, fantastic work. So he basically just asked people to parang send in all of the beautiful stories of love and gratitude from all around the world, and people obliged. But there's one material which is foreign. I can send it to you afterwards, but it's from Jack Daniels. What they also did was ask people to shoot footage of themselves, basically still creating human connections while doing physical or social distancing, all in the backdrop of like an acoustic version of True Colors, which is really nice. So that's on Curate. And Collaborate, as I said, is just working with YouTubers. If you just look at, for example, all the talk shows, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, my favorite, The Daily Show, they're all just filming stuff from their own homes. And honestly, I actually find it's far more interesting than their regular shows. I laugh a lot more, even if there's no laugh track. Conan, who's my favorite, just makes fun of his staff through video calls. That's always super fun. So they figured out a way. And I just watched American Idol as well. That was really cool because they had already gotten to like the top 20 singers, and now they were on to live shows. But like, how are you going to do live shows if you can't have a crowd, if you can't have the crew all in one place? So what they did was they distributed camera, lighting, and sound equipment into all the 20 finalist homes, and of course the judges, and then just did everything through remote. We obviously still need entertainment, and I'm glad that the industry that's in charge of that is finding ways to creatively still make it happen.
Okay, so speaking of collaborations, didn't you guys do a collab with the DOTR?
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right. I forgot about that. We did a tie-up with the DOTR. There was basically a government shuttle service that brought frontliners from certain places that are near their homes towards the hospitals that they're going to. So what we've done is that we work with DOTR to actually map out the routes of these shuttle services so that, for example, if I lived in Mandaluyong, I can look for the nearest stop, and then I can find which shuttle gets me to whichever hospital I work in. So that was one really great collaboration we did. There were others that were also done with maps. And also during the time that people were, I guess, starting to feel the cabin fever, I'm sure we still are, but and wanted to do their own virtual Visita Iglesia. We had put some of the biggest churches in Manila and in the Philippines actually into Google Street View. So people were able to do a virtual 360 tour of different churches, even in the comfort of their own home. So yeah, those are just a couple of collaborations we've done with them.
Can you mention some of the YouTubers that are doing a good job of creating, curating, and collaborating now?
We have a local YouTuber who actually is doing all of these different lessons on YouTube. Yeah, and she's basically just grown her presence during the time of the quarantine. So she has about 500,000 subs. Her name is Team Laika, so you should go check her out. One of my favorite new vlogs is Kim J. It's Kim Molina and Gerald Napoles. You might know them if you watch Rock of Ages.
Yep.
They're supremely talented.
So talented.
Supremely, super funny. They started a YouTube channel where it's basically like a quarantine diary of sorts for them, and they're just doing random things in their house.
What are some of the topics that are big on YouTube right now?
The first big one is cooking.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Cook With Me globally has actually grown more than 100%. We always joke that once people are out of quarantine, everyone's going to just audition for MasterChef because they've just figured out how to cook in a short amount of time.
Ripped, right?
That's absolutely. I'm doing neither. So I can't cook. So if you're seeing in my background, you might see like there's a stove there. The stove has not been connected to anything in the 10 years I've lived in this apartment.
Man.
So I'm not one of those people cooking, but a lot of people are learning new recipes and stuff like that. So cooking is one. Working out, as you mentioned, is the other one. One of the bigger trends in Philippines is HIIT because people wanted like quick workouts that were still like really intense. My parents are watching dance workouts, so cool. That's great. Studying, as I mentioned, so Team Leica is part of that movement. And actually, home office is the other one. So just figuring out your setup, making sure that you keep your work-life balance. How do you make a conducive environment if you wanted to grow plants, for example, so that you can feel more relaxed? So those are all things that people have been searching for on YouTube. A lot of those would fall within the big umbrella idea of hashtag with me, where basically people just talk about all the different ways they're coping. But those are the big four categories that have really grown in the last month and a half.
So if you're a dancing chef with interior design skills, you're set, right?
Oh yeah, you're golden. It's prime time for you.
Okay, hold on. How does someone go from 0 subscribers to 1 million in 21 days, 22 days?
Part of it is luck, part of it is momentum, and part of it is obviously like following some best practice on the platform. As I always tell any aspiring YouTuber, start with an idea that you are personally actually passionate about. I think no one should enter YouTube with the intent of making money first. I think you'll be disappointed and you'll be impatient because it takes a while for most normal people to build up a following. And then also just keep an eye out, like really, at least at the beginning, really obsess over your analytics and watch for which type of content is getting in the viewers, which type of content is extending your watch time, because the biggest currency for YouTube is watch time. So the more people stay on your channel, whether it's one video or multiple videos, that's what rewards your channel in the algorithm or in the search results. Yeah, so I think those are the two most general tips I can give if you want to start a channel. So be obsessed about your analytics and do something you're clearly very passionate about.
Can you talk about these huge mainstream stars starting their own YouTube channels? Everyone is on YouTube now. Can you talk about that for a bit?
I think it started from a couple of years ago, and part of it was just some of the big access stuff that's been going on in the landscape. So for example, you have Smart offering free 1 hour of YouTube every day. And that got a lot of people sort of on board with the platform. And so the platform itself, YouTube, started to really grow. But what also started the ball rolling was some big celebrities actually pivoting completely to digital. And I think one of the first ones to do it was, honestly, Chris Aquino was probably one of the first ones to do it. So her team had engaged us some time back, and we took her through what were the best practices. And she grew quite quickly on the platform. And then that allowed other celebrities to get more curious about the space as well. So we started workshopping Juday and all these different celebrities. I think at the time when we were workshopping Juday, her channel Judy Ann's Kitchen was already quite big. Actually, it was already like 180,000 subs at the time. Wow. Now she's over 1 million. She's grown big time. Heart Evangelista also, I'm sure you know, is on YouTube, but her channel also grew really fast. So she's now at, I think, more than 1.5 million subscribers. I think celebrities find that they can be their most authentic selves on YouTube. Usually when you post about yourself on social media, you have to be a more curated, more polished, more perfect version of yourself. And in YouTube, you can, I think the more authentic, the more real, the more accessible or attainable sort of you are, the more people are drawn to you. I think it's been sort of a virtuous cycle, because the more celebrities come on YouTube, the more people or viewers come into the platform, and the more the platform grows. And then that also inspires even more celebrities to come on the platform, and vice versa. So that's just the cycle we've been on the last couple of years.
What does that mean for the smaller players? By that, I mean the YouTubers that are starting out without the celebrity names attached to them.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like for example, like Mimia came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
She's 2.5 million subs at the moment. She is not a big celebrity, but her personality is just so endearing, and she was such a unique voice in the space that she grew so much just in the last year. I mean, I understand it's a double-edged sword because technically you're competing for a person has a finite number of hours to be on the platform, and so if part of that is being spent watching celebrity content, then of course there's slightly less time to watch other things. But the fact is that that's also bringing in more viewers to YouTube, and it's creating a more regular habit of watching more vlogs. And so that means that celebrities are helping create a much larger pie, and therefore a small piece of a larger pie still is still a net positive for most creators.
Okay, I know you hate these two words, but can you take us through the new normal for video creators?
I think we focused a lot on live streaming at this point. So we've been educating clients on doing live experiences. Honestly, we're also still kind of figuring out the space, but one of the big ones that we've done recently was we had Ben and Ben actually launch their new single Doors through a live stream. So they had done one just a couple of weeks during the beginning of the quarantine on social, and then they did one, and then they did it with us like a few weeks later, and they got I think 60,000 concurrent views
Wow.
watching that, all while collecting donations for their charity pohon. So in the course of I think the 3 or 4 weeks that they've been collecting donations, they've gotten to about 5 million pesos. So I think live streaming I think is going to be a very big thing, but and not just in music, but even in other industries like working out. There's a lot of these trainers doing mostly virtual personal training. I know like my CrossFit gym is now primarily doing like app-based, video-based kind of training. So that's one trend. I think there's not going to be obviously shooting in big crowds or live events is not going to be something that we're going to see in the near future. I know a lot of different companies have basically stopped or have sworn to not do any big live gatherings for the next year or so. And so we've been also helping, for example, smartphone manufacturers. How would you do your phone launch in a virtual way while keeping it experiential? So I think one of the other challenges with live streaming, and as we've also discovered through our own live streams, was figuring out a way to make it interactive. So there are a lot of different tools out there. There's Kahoot, there's Slido, a lot of different apps that make that possible. But like one thing that's also worth exploring is that if you want to make something experiential, you can like deliver, of course, following sanitation measures, deliver something to someone's house, which will facilitate sort of an interaction with the actual live stream, so that they're sort of so that there's sort of a participation even if you're not in the same room. So there's that. As far as production, I mean, to be honest, I would hope that in the very near future, the production houses and the film industry would start opening up. I believe in some areas where it's now on GCQ or general quarantine, that industry has begun to open up. But I think for the next year, we're going to have to be a lot mindful about people's situations, making sure we continue being sensitive to people who don't have the luxury of I guess money, or being able to buy the things that they were used to buying, and also just making sure that we are as helpful as possible in the way that we talk about especially if you're a brand, because actually people do trust brands quite a lot, and so brands have actually a very important voice in this. And so the more that, but I think one thing to keep in mind is that if a brand suddenly shifts their voice into becoming helpful when that wasn't what they stood for before, it can be a bit jarring, and um, it can be misconstrued as, oh, this brand is just trying to profit from this entire thing. So I think brands would need to find an angle that still stays true to their own voice while being mindful of the situation. So I think those are the ways that, creatives will need to change in the coming months.
How about you? How are you dealing with this lockdown personally?
As an employer, I'm just very happy about how they've looked out for our well-being and how they've equipped us to be fully there for the clients we work with.
Okay, so if you could choose one thing that our viewers and listeners could take away from this podcast, from this episode, what would that be?
I think creatives have an essential role at this time in keeping people sane. There are a lot of very creative ways of going about it, whether it's live streaming, collaborating with others, repurposing stuff, making stuff available for free, doing virtual versions of things. But I think creatives have the responsibility to make sure that our minds are not completely just immersed in the hardship of what we're going through, but provide an escape into, what our lives used to be and can be once all this is over.
So there you have it. Create, curate, and collaborate. Don't let this virus stop you from being creative. If you like this show, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if there are other topics you'd like us to discuss, please let us know in the comments below. That's it for this episode. Stay safe, everyone.